This story happened about 15 years ago, and I still shudder to remember those events as if it were yesterday. My life changed after that terrible night. Probably we, mere mortals, to realize some things. We first need to experience something shocking, something that kind of shakes us up. Only after such an experience, we wake up and begin to think differently, begin to appreciate what used to seem ordinary. We were very young. We had just graduated from the institute. I always had a lot of admirers. I liked men's attention very much. However, I chose him, a bully and sharp-tongued Dmitri. My love with him was quite complicated. We often quarreled. I constantly left him, but then came back again. Dima was a man very sharp and fiery. In addition, female attention he was fully gifted with, literally from kindergarten. So I had with him was not sweet. Envious friends, I could not cry in the vest in difficult periods of our relationship because I knew that they would not understand me and perhaps even rejoice that everything with me and Dima is not so smooth. I could share my troubles only with Sasha, my best childhood friend. I knew that he was in love with me, but he hid it. Sasha was always there for me in the most difficult moments of my life, supporting me in everything and always. He could drop everything if I needed any of his help. You can't meet such friends in a lifetime. However, I understand perfectly well that my relationship with Dima was poisoning the life of my best friend. But youth is quite stupid and blind. It is inherent to make mistakes. Another quarrel with Dima, and he leaves everything and goes to another city to his friend. I am almost sure that there he quickly found a temporary replacement for me. I ran to Sasha in tears and upset feelings, who of course did not turn away from me. To distract me, he called me to the nature with his friends. To relax, I agreed. The weather was wonderful. We looked for a place to stop for a long time. In the end, we chose a small clearing, which we came through the forest. Not far away, we could see a small, abandoned village. We were laughing, talking about everything. I was really distracted from my problems. It was easy and good. The company gathered soulful. Sasha from me not a step away. Sometimes it seemed to me that I was making a huge mistake, rejecting such a man. But then I remembered about Dima. I loved him after all. Or maybe I was just sick of him. I don't know how to call it right. I still don't understand myself in those years. It got dark. We were going home. Everyone had already left. Only Sasha and I were left. While we were putting things away in his car, we chatted a little, laughed. It was already dark when we started to drive. The light of headlights illuminated our way. It was already cool enough that I turned on the heater in the car. The bumpy road went straight through the forest, past an abandoned village. It was no longer visible in the darkness of the night. When we entered the forest, after 300 meters, he appeared. It all happened in an instant. Just someone, as if out of nowhere, appeared right in our path. All I could see was crazy, bloodshot eyes looking straight at us and some torn clothes. Sasha sharply hit the brakes, and at that moment, someone immediately tore off into the dark forest thicket with some terrible, mad laughter. We were both terrified, unable to catch our breath from fear. Who it was, or what it was, I didn't realize. But I was very scared. I offered to get away from here sooner. I don't know exactly how much further we traveled, but the forest seemed endless. By my calculations, we should have reached the highway a long time ago, but for some reason, it wasn't even visible. At some point, the car stopped abruptly and did not want to go any further. Sasha fell into a stupor. Before leaving, he checked the car. There were no problems. What happened? We went out. I shone a flashlight, and Sasha was digging under the hood looking for problems, but everything was normal. It was already quite cold. Even steam was coming out of my mouth. Sasha waved his hands. It was a completely incomprehensible situation. Suddenly, we heard the branches crunching. I sharply turned around and shone a flashlight into the forest thicket. No one. I shone it left and right. Only trees and bushes. Silence. Suddenly something flashed in the foliage that had been quietly lurking all this time. Everything shook and rustled for a moment, and I almost dropped the flashlight from my hands with fear. In the total darkness of the forest, someone was clearly there, and it was as if he was playing with us. Sasha grabbed me and put me in the car. He He sat in the driver's seat and closed everything so that no one could get in. I was shaking with fear. Every now and then I heard echoes of that creepy, crazy laughter, as if it were everywhere, from all sides at once. Sasha kept turning his head, hoping to catch a glimpse of the one who was mocking us so cruelly. The light in the car went out abruptly. The flashlight in my hand went out just as hopelessly. Tears ran down my cheeks. Sasha continued to start the car to no avail, and I could see how nervous he was. Somebody started rocking us. It's like a rocking motion. Who could rock a heavy car so easily? We couldn't even scream. It was so scary. There was not a soul around, almost nothing to see, total darkness, and in this darkness there was something that obviously wanted to get to us. The banging on the doors started, but there was no one in sight. It was just something drumming on the car doors with such force that it drowned out everything around it. Sasha pulled me against him. I think he was scared too, but he didn't show it. It seemed to me that it was all a dream, a long and terrible nightmare. That creepy laughter that turned to screaming as he circled the car, rocking it and drumming on it with terrible force. Then it stopped abruptly. I could hear my heart beating frantically in my chest. Sasha held me tightly in his arms. He promised me that we would be okay and that he would get me out of here. I cried and wanted to believe him. Sasha couldn't cheat. There was silence, complete. Only the pounding of my heart in my ears. Only the pounding in my temples. Nothing else. It was as if nothing had happened. We didn't move. It was scary to even blink, so as not to spook the stillness with an awkward movement. I lifted my head to look around. Nothing seemed to be there anymore. I slowly shifted my gaze to the driver's window, and like an electric shock him, a horrible, disgusting face, covered with blood, from which only those crazy, huge eyes, glittering with madness and cruelty, those teeth, sharp and crooked as an old bear's, hair sticking out in wisps, were visible. The moonlight faintly fell on that ugly face, staring curiously, as if with a smirk, at us point blank through the window, all this time. But what I saw was forever etched in my memory. That silence was false. The creature had been quietly lurking all this time, admiring us and enjoying our helplessness. I screamed, and the thing immediately ran away. I'm not sure if Sasha saw what I saw. As he was sitting with his back to the window, I wanted to crawl into the farthest corner to become small, tiny, and run away from here as far as possible. Sasha abruptly grabbed a large hunting knife from his bag in the back seat and jumped out of the car. He stood in the pitch darkness and screamed. He was calling out to the thing, wanting to kill it. At last, I sobbed in the car and begged him to come back. If something happened to him, I'd be all alone in that hellish place. No matter how many times Sasha called for attention, no one answered. I sat in the car, shaking. At some point, I felt something cold running down my shoulder, then down my arm. Suddenly, there was an unpleasant metallic odor in my nose. I shifted my gaze to my arm and saw a thick trail of blood running down it. I turned back around. He was sitting there, smiling so that his crooked fangs glowed with a nasty yellow light. He touched my shoulder with his clawed, ugly hand. I jumped out of the car with a wild scream and ran to Sasha. He picked me up. Now it wasn't safe in the car either. How did it get in there? I don't understand. We stood scared and defenseless in the middle of the dark forest road. I clung to Sasha. He was my last hope. Only he could get us out of here. Let's run away from here. We will not return to the car, said Sasha. We rushed down the road. We ran with our last strength. The moon illuminated almost nothing. From behind the fluffy treetops, its light faintly penetrated the ground. It was cold and insanely scary. I could smell it everywhere. I could hear the ghastly laughter in my ears, and the strong odor of blood still lingered in my nose. I was sick with the sensation and the fear. I felt like we'd been running forever. Time stretched like rubber, and there was no end in sight to our torment. I was ready to collapse on the road. Sasha picked me up every now and then. He was almost dragging me on his back. It seemed to me that everything around me was a dream. There was even some sense of loss of time, the viscosity of reality. I can't put into words what it felt like. It came back completely out of the blue. I don't know where it's been all this time. I guess it was useless to run. The creature jumped out of the bushes and fell on Sasha, his knife flying out of his hands. I fell to the ground and hit my head, so hard that my ears were ringing. I was lying there and saw Sasha trying to hit this thing, which was looming over him and waving its long, crooked paws. It kept laughing, screaming, shrieking. I tried to get up, but my whole body was pierced by a terrible pain, all my muscles cramped. This vile creature pinned Sasha to the ground with its paws, pressed and held. They looked at each other, point blank, and only blood dripped from above on Sasha. He was lying there like a stump. I don't know why. Maybe the thing was so strong, or maybe he was bewitched. I grabbed a rock and threw it at our pursuer. With a pig-like squeal, he rushed back into the darkness. Sasha lay on the ground without moving. I saw his big, frightened eyes. With difficulty getting up, I immediately ran to him. I held out my hand. He stood up and I realized that he had seen something terrible in the eyes of that thing. "We shouldn't have come here. It's a foreign land." "I'm sorry," only Sasha said. I tried for a long time to find out what he meant by saying that this was a foreign land, but my friend didn't want to say anything more. Insanely tired, exhausted, dusty, we walked for a long time, just walking forward on this endless road. Our legs were dragging like rags. I didn't care anymore. If that thing jumped out at us again, I probably wouldn't run anymore. I'd rather die than keep hiding, keep fighting. Sasha just kept walking in silence, clutching my hand tightly. I think for him too, the moment had come when he no longer cared about anything, when his own life was a burden. It seemed like an eternity to me. We reached the small village at dawn. On the way, I saw the gleam of mad eyes in the bushes and heard that awful laugh. But the thing never dared to attack us again. I didn't know why it left us alone, all of a sudden. Maybe it was afraid of the dawn. I don't know. We knocked on the first house, exhausted and beaten. An old woman, very nice looking, opened the door. She gasped when she saw us and immediately let us in. We told her everything, explained where our car was. We needed a phone. While Sasha went to call someone, this grandmother told me that we had chosen a bad place to rest. There was an abandoned village near the clearing where we were camping. It was once a village of sorcerers, a very old and black, magic-soaked place. Around this village, there was constant misfortune. People were often sick and dying. For this reason, the villagers from all the neighboring villages decided to lynch and burn the sorcerers like witches on the bonfires. It was a long time ago that nobody would have been seriously punished for it. No one knew. The village was far away from the larger settlements. My grandmother said that the souls of those witches still roam those places in the form of hell. They are trapped between worlds, punished for their sorcery in life, and hate all the living. They want human souls. Taking them makes them stronger. These things condense time around you, suffocate you, abuse you as best they can. Nothing scares them. They're masters of their own land. Our friends came to pick us up a few hours later. They could hardly believe our story. I understand them. It was hard to believe in our adequacy at that moment. We found our abandoned car. Strangely enough, it started right away, and we drove it home. Away from this cursed place, accompanied by our friends. Sasha was always silent. He only occasionally looked at me as if he knew something very sad, but could not tell me, no matter how much I begged him. Sometime after this incident, Sasha died. He suddenly found out that he was seriously ill and burned out in a few months. All this time, I was by his side, crying all the time. I couldn't believe that my Sasha would leave me. I held his hand, and he looked faithfully into my eyes, realizing there was nothing he could do. He couldn't continue to be with me. I forgot about Dima, and finally realized that the one I could really rely on and trust had been there for me all this time. But by my own stupidity, I missed the chance for happiness. After Sasha's death, his mother gave me a note from him, in which my favorite friend wrote about how much he loved me, that he would always be by my side, and that I continued to live on no matter what. In the letter, He told me what he saw then in the eyes of that thing. He saw his death. He literally felt his soul moving inexorably towards the black abyss, into which it was being pulled by our stalker. Mentally, this creature offered Sasha to take my soul, then he would be free. But Sasha refused and saw his death. When the creature fled, the vision stopped instantly. But now, my friend knew that he was doomed. That's why this evil spirit never touched us again the rest of the way. He got what he wanted. There are some things we must realize only after a certain shaking. It's a pity that the most important things come to us when everything is lost and nothing can be changed. It's been almost 15 years, and I still hate myself for losing my happiness. I still love him, and I feel like he's really always there for me.